Oh, I think it's going to be a tasty episode, so I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
It's hard to pick between those three.
Yeah. All right, so where should we start with UAP? Do you have questions? Do you want me to talk about kind of my fascination with it, or you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's good because I think you, of the two of us, you are probably more interested than I am. But I am interested as a spectator for sure.
Very good. Very good.
So like, get me into this.
Okay,
tell me
so basically, as you know, people have been reporting anomalous sightings for decades and decades and decades. But there's also anecdotal evidence that these things have been happening for thousands of years, right? And one of the places that it intersects, faith and philosophy very quickly is when you look at all the different stories from all the different world cultures and religions that deal with visitors from the sky or these non-human intelligences that are powerful. Some are benevolent, some are not so benevolent. And so this idea has been with humanity from the start of humanity, it seems like, and, art and culture bear that out through the centuries. But in the 1940s, we entered the atomic age, and we had an incident called Roswell that nobody officially really knows what that was. Since Roswell, there's been this heightened public interest in what exactly are these things? Are they real? Are they not? Are they ours? Or have we designed top secret, tech that does all these things that we can't even physically imagine, right? But it's gone from this fringe thing because mainstream respectable science has kind of always kept it at arm's length, right? And there's a lot of discussion.
Except in Hollywood.
Right. Except for in Hollywood. So you've had over the years legitimate scientists, people who are very intelligent and aren't just sort of specialists in one little area of this vast fringe, sprawling, nebulous, whatever. But people like Jacques Vallée, who is a computer scientist, he's a philosopher, he's a venture capitalist, he's a UFO researcher, he's a very serious guy. And there are many others. And if you start to learn about the history of how the government has tried to interact with the phenomenon, you'll hear all kinds of names. John Hynek is another one, and there are many others. Tom DeLonge, eventually. Yeah. He's integral to this whole thing. Yeah.
Not quite the scientist that, I in some ways he may be.
Yeah.
A musical scientist.
Yeah. So basically, long story short, for those who haven't been following this, and I'll say the way that I got into it is like anybody else as a kid. You're like, wouldn't that be cool if aliens were real? And you watch Star Trek and you watch Star Wars and you read all the books and everything. And then when I used to do a lot of late night driving, so I got really plugged into like the weird AM late night radio, and they would always be talking about this stuff. This is like 20 years ago. But where this all becomes mainstream is actually 6 years ago this week. A major story ran on the front page of the New York Times about, I think it was 6 incidents with video that the government admits, Pentagon and the congressional leadership all admit they don't know what it is. They don't know what these things are. Very sober-minded, serious Navy pilots and officials say, we can't understand what we're seeing, but here's the video. So behind the scenes, there was a push by many people in the government to start getting greater transparency in the middle of the last decade. And basically, they got as far as they could and were shut down. So Lou Elizondo, who was one of the directors of one of these programs, basically resigned and started to come public. And he's one of the ones who was integral in getting the videos to the New York Times and then starting this new level of discussion about UAP in a legitimate way. So now you see the budget showdowns at the end of this year in Congress. One of the big things happening right now is every year they have to authorize the Defense Spending Act. This year, Chuck Schumer has an amendment that basically would set up a time frame for actual disclosure of whatever the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, but also importantly, private aerospace companies that we've farmed this stuff out to potentially. Whatever they know needs to come into the purview of Congress. The bill doesn't say you have to tell the whole world, but as of right now, Congress is discovering that there are top secret programs that are so siloed that they have no oversight. And the issue with that is, of course, that you've got unelected bureaucrats in government, but also unelected capitalists at these companies making all these decisions about policy if these things are real. And at the very least, it seems to be true that our government is in possession or has been in possession of partial or even whole craft that we didn't
Non-
create, that we don't think our adversaries made. Yeah.
non-human organic material.
Yeah,
Is
potentially.
is that the word?
Non-human intelligence is what we say instead of aliens now, because we don't know, are they extraterrestrial? Are they from a different dimension? Are they from our future? Are they us from the future? Right? They could be any.
Are they the Atlanteans?
Are they the? Well, that's the ultra-terrestrial theory, which states they're a breakaway civilization that's been hiding from us for all this time.
I don't want to make it weird. Was that too weird? Was that too way out there?
No, we're barely scratching the surface of what they call the woo in all this.
It's like I could believe in aliens from outer space, but once you go into the ocean, that's where we draw the line, man. You can't go there.
Exactly.
Not having no Aquaman, no Aquaman or Namor coming up from the sea.
Right. So the reason I'm so interested in it now is because now it's actually front page news. It's actually in the congressional record. And more is coming out that seems very vetted and very plausible, that I feel like should be more shocking to me, but it's not. Because I've kind of always believed that, there has to be intelligence somewhere. But if it's as fundamentally, I don't know, whatever it is could totally change all of our narratives about everything, at least potentially.
Right.
So that's why I like to talk about it.
I think it begs the question, there's this like juxtaposition between transparency and confidentiality, right? And like, who decides that? And then I guess the second thing is like, who determines if we even have a right to it? Transparency or confidentiality, right? Either side, right? Yeah. So, I mean, we don't know why it would be confidential for so long, right? Is it a national security risk? Is it an entrepreneurial risk? Right? Is there just a bunch of, I don't know, like, has it gone on so long that it's really nothing? And so it's like, right? So it's like, we don't want to let out the steam that like, it's really not that big of a deal. So like, there's all sorts of things, but on the other side is like transparency. Like, do I have a right to know as a human being, like what's going on? Like where do my rights as an individual extend into saying like, if you guys have proof that there's something going on there that's outside of human intelligence, should I know? And do I have the right to know? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's going on. A lot of these conversations is, how much do we let people in and how much do we not? And, where's the line? Does Congress get involved or do they not get involved? And so I think there's a good question. That's a good philosophy question, is like just the right to information in general, right?
Right. And I think for me and for a lot of people, where the rubber meets the road on this is some of those questions you're asking are really unanswerable, right, except if we sort of stick to what we say we're about as a democracy,
right?
Whatever the truth is, it sure does seem problematic that the only people who know are people who have no accountability to the voting populace, and that's crazy. And that could be very good if everybody in that system, and that closed system, is benevolent and wise and prudent and good, and has everybody's best interests at heart, and somehow is wise enough to know what they are. And I'm not suggesting either that if this comes into the purview of Congress, that all of a sudden it's going to be treated with maturity and transparency. Because that's
why would you say that, Chris?
That's the other problem.
You don't think the Congress is a mature, organization that has everyone's best interest in it?
Right. And the funny thing about this too,
no politics on this show.
Yeah. Well, the
just kidding.
Everybody's talking about how the push for this is very bipartisan, but there are 4 or 5 Republicans, high-ranking, who want to basically take out all the teeth of the Schumer amendment because they want to protect these secrets. And part of that, so say the opponents of these folks, is, well, yeah, because Lockheed Martin are the biggest donors to their campaign, and because their home districts are where Air Force, Patterson Air Force Base is, and so these things are all connected. But the other thing about that is, it is a bipartisan effort. So you've got AOC and Schumer who are in support of this. And then you've got guys like, what's his name? Matt Gaetz, like that guy's, that's a whole other thing. But, people like him and Representative Luna, who are like total MAGA people. And the problem there is that this is what I've seen. I've seen serious Democrats support this and serious Republicans, but I've seen the fringe Republicans be the ones who are kind of out there doing their own little press conferences, and they can't help themselves from talking about, from throwing digs in at Biden when they're talking about passing this bipartisan amendment.
Of course.
And I don't really care that they're taking shots at Biden, apart from the fact that it cheapens this idea that this is actually about humankind's best interests and not about scoring political points.
Well, I mean, I guess the only pot shot we could take is like he might have been around, 40, 50, 60 years ago, still in office when some of these things are being like originated, right? I mean, we could make pot shots like that, but I mean, like anyone in any administration is probably going to do that. I mean, during the Clinton years, everything was Bush's fault and Reagan's fault, right? And then, and now it's like we still have a holdover that everything is Donald Trump and Obama's fault, right? So it's like, whoever's in office is going to get the fall for it. It's like, who was responsible for World War II? Like, there's clearly like Obama and Biden, like that's, just how things go, right? So
exactly.
Those pot shots are not surprising to me, but I think you're right. It's like, could you use your platform to just maybe talk about the idea of transparency and confidentiality is a really good one that we should grapple with in the public space, right?
Yeah.
And this is a perfect litmus test or test case to say, like, how much do the American public or Congress or whoever need it? And I think you said it really well. It's not that everyone needs to know everything. It's that there needs to be some level of accountability with whoever knows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
Whoever knows anything, there should be some sort of accountability if it's a public policy issue, right? I mean, like, my own shame, right? My narrative trauma, which we'll get to in a little bit. I mean, it may not need to be public record, but there are certain things that I know that might be public policy, and they should be potentially available to everyone. I don't know where the line is, right? Is there a national security risk or whatever? I have a hard time believing that there's a huge national security risk, because we're talking about stuff that's happened for years and years and years and years. It just seems like there's enough people that would know about it at this point in time that it would not be like world-ending stuff for us to know about something. But so that's kind of where I land on it is, how can this be that much of an issue if it's been a phenomenon that's been going on for that much time?
That's a great question. And one of the fears, I guess, that some people have is, okay, well, maybe the truth is so shocking. They use the term ontological shock, right? That it would, disrupt the economy. It would disrupt institutions. It would further somehow degrade society, and we'd have all these kinds of issues. Because we don't know how people would respond. In media, like say in The Watchmen, right? When the alien appears at the end of the book, everybody joins together. But that's almost a critique of itself, because that would not probably happen.
For those of you that haven't seen or read Watchmen, sorry for the spoiler. But
you've had 40 years. You've
had 40 years. So it's and the movie came out in like 2008.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. You have 35 years.
Sorry to spoil Watchmen for you, one of my favorite books, but
I think Alan Moore will forgive us. He doesn't forgive easily.
It doesn't seem like he forgives easily, but he may forgive that one. He may forgive that one.
But I think the other part of all of this is, so if if it is something truly shocking, the questions are then going to be, how does this fit into our cosmology and our spirituality and our philosophy and everything like that? And, I've never been one to think that like a true Christian worldview, let's call it a Christian cosmic view, should have any reason to be afraid of the idea that there's other intelligent life, even life that's more intelligent than we are. Because after all, the interesting thing is our scriptures are full of non-human intelligence, right? That's what animates everything, right? So,
there's many visitations by many special people in this book that we believe in. And it's like, why would this be something that would cause my faith to flounder in a way that, I do. C.S. Lewis wrote about that. Like, he had some fiction books that were fantastic, right?
Yeah.
That grappled with that idea. And
exactly.
Were they science fiction? Sure. But I think that there's plenty of people that are on the conservative Christian side that would say like, oh, those are great books.
Oh, yeah.
And people on the progressive side that would also look at it and say like, they're great. So if it happened to be true, would that shake my faith? I don't know. It's so mind blowing that clearly the people that are in charge of it survived.
Mhm. Well, the interesting thing about that
I mean,
is,
we think, right? I
yeah,
don't know. Maybe they
no, that's true. And I guess part of the current push toward transparency and disclosure is, there is now congressional testimony on the record from high-ranking people that there has been violence done to people to try to keep this secret. There has probably been murder. There has been certainly character assassination and the ruining of people's careers and lives and everything else. So there's that part of it, right? And then there's this, on the cosmological side, there is this reality that a lot of people in the Department of Defense are fundamentalist Christians, apparently. And if you're a Christian that's disinclined to believe that dinosaurs are real, for example, like the current Speaker of the House, right? Mike Johnson. You may view all of these, if you're read into this stuff, you may view this as demonic. Well, these aren't aliens, these are demons, and they're here to deceive us. And if they come and tell us that they're peaceful, that's just Satan's minions, right? Because your worldview is so tied to what you think the Bible literally says, right? So I've read a lot and watched a lot of interviews with people who say some of the fundamentalists in the State Department are some of the ones who are really holding back because they think it's demonic and it's a deception and it's from Satan or whatever.
I hadn't considered that potential. Hey, maybe you can't rule everything out.
No,
maybe not. Right.
Right.
There's always, we don't know until the disclosure happens.
Exactly.
Right? We won't be able to look at it. And I'm sure that everyone will play, if it does happen, we'll play quarterback on the other side of it and tell us what to believe about it. And whether or not the disclosure is even real after it happens, correct? Right.
And I think that might be one of the reasons.
Which news outlet gets it first? That's the question.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons that maybe if there are sober-minded actors, behind the scenes, maybe they're scared to death that if this does come out in all of its fullness, that, we'll have such division immediately and we won't know who to believe. And you will have people, from all parts of Christianity or Islam or any other religion saying it's this, it's that, it's the other. And that's why I guess it's really important to be rational and to try to, The reason I'm so interested in the topic now is because I do think we are a hell of a lot closer to finding out the truth, or at least part of the truth, than we were 6 years ago. And I think...
Thanks, Boulder.
Yeah. But I think by the time our kids are sitting here in their 40s, I think we
It'll
may
be
well know.
yesterday's news.
Yeah. And so, my worldview, my cosmological view certainly is, if God exists, right, why is it outlandish to think that he created other things, or that he, or that God did other things?